Messi to Inter Miami has started something that we've never seen before, which is a player actually getting gross revenue from multiple sources, not only the team that they're playing on, but the conjoining partnered companies that are all entangled in getting portions of this game out there. So you have Apple, you have Adidas, which he's now going to be getting part of that revenue, which we've never seen before. So all the agents out there must be licking their chops. I don't see why more players don't shoot for getting some of this gross revenue. I mean, the guy turned down billions of dollars to go play in Saudi Arabia, to play in the United States. I mean, this is huge, folks. Do you know what would happen if all of our athletes here started doing this? Where there was a company that was able to come along, or even a team to come along and offer these guys revenue share? Do you know what would happen? This is going to transcend sports history, this one deal with Messi. And I'm excited. I actually went back and started watching some Messi highlights. Dude, I am a Messi fan. The things that this guy can do with the ball finally render my appreciation for the sport. Because for the longest, I thought football, soccer, I thought it was boring. I mean, the fact that you're lucky to score more than 2 points, and it's just constantly watching people run up and down the field, up and down. Maybe it's the way that they televise these games that makes it so boring. Because when they cut into those close-ups, especially the highlights of him juking the crap out of people on the soccer field, it's riveting. And I'm like, where is this? Where are the freaking GoPro camera angles and the drones and, oh my God, the Movi handheld cameras that are running alongside the players? This is what we need to see, because this will actually showcase how tenacious and exciting this particular sport is. So I'm excited. Miami is on fire. I mean, on fire. They got a team that's going for the Stanley Cup. The Panthers are killing it. Miami is on fire. The Panthers are killing it. Miami's in the finals, and they got Messi. I mean, Miami's just winning. Chris Paul is just not what the Lakers need. I know everyone thinks that the Lakers need Chris Paul. They don't need Chris Paul. They're looking to get somebody like Kyrie, somebody like Trae Young. I just don't see Chris Paul going to the Lakers. I think they're tired of the injury narratives, and they got their hands full already with Anthony Davis. But I think some really good places for Chris Paul to find himself at are definitely New Orleans and the Spurs. The Spurs is what I'm most excited about for Chris Paul, because they could definitely benefit from his leadership. They also have the experience navigating point guards, legacy point guards like Tony Parker. They could use somebody with his mentality, toughness, and leadership to direct a Wembanyama starring team. The G League could be a highly successful, competitive, amazing basketball league. All you would have to do is promise a player, a prominent player, an opportunity at gross revenue share, just like Messi with soccer. So you take a guy who is being talked about in the media, let's say it's Wembanyama, right? And you say, this guy is going to play exclusively in the G League. The only way you're going to see him is in the G League. Now, what's the incentive for this highly talked about, highly anticipated player to spend a year in the G League? You give him revenue share. So for every game that is played and he's on the court, he's pulling in that ticket revenue, the TV revenue, all the revenue that is generated from that event, he gets a piece. And watch every single top rookie prospect want to then play in the G League? If Wembanyama committed to playing a year in the G League, and the rule was, or part of his contract was, that he would take 10%, 5%, whatever the percentage was of the actual ticket revenue, and that whole place was packed, don't you think that it would change the landscape of how we deal with the G League? Every G League game would be sold out, and they would bump the prices 3x. Then people would actually say, forget going overseas. I want to stay in the U.S. and play in the G League. So the NBA, listen up. If you want the G League to be successful, you need a quality superstar that's getting ready to get drafted agree that they're going to play in the G League for the first year, and they're going to take some revenue share. And that's how it can explode. Resident Evil was the case study for Twitch. Scariest game ever made. Resident Evil proved that there was an audience for people who actually wanted to watch other people play video games. I remember being in the 3rd grade and being so petrified of this game that I wouldn't even touch the control stick. I mean, my friend Michael would just play this game. Michael and Joseph, they would just play this game. And it was just the most entertaining thing ever, because it was like being in a movie that you could control. And oh my God, all the zombies that would pop up, the fact that you're in this mansion, the music, the sound effects. I mean, the fact that these characters would just jump out at you. This is all new stuff that we had never seen before as kids. We probably should not have been playing Resident Evil, and I should not have been watching it. But I have to say, scariest game ever made, Resident Evil. Fight me on this. And if you say Silent Hill, if anybody in the comments says Silent Hill, I'm going to absolutely lose it. Hell to the no. The greatest RPG game ever made was 1999 for PS1. It was labeled greatest hits because they were trying to spur more sales. The greatest hits games were always 1999. That was the deal. And it came with multiple discs, 3 discs. I mean, that's epic to open up a video game case and to see 3 discs of adventure and action. If you haven't guessed by now, I'm talking about Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII is the greatest RPG game ever made. From the storyline, the music, the missions, the graphics, the characters, the lore, the fact that they have the most gut-wrenching scene in game cinematic history when Aerith gets the sword right through the back from Sephiroth. I mean, come on. It had everything. The chocobos, the island, or you could just play all these games. I mean, if you're a true FF7 fan, you know exactly what this is. For those bums who don't know what I'm doing, this is a little game that you play where you're practicing in a boxing ring, and Cloud is boxing, and you got to do these little boxing workouts. That's where the choo 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 comes from. Every little aspect of this game, it was fun just training and getting better and leveling up and summoning these crazy monsters that come in Leviathan, and all this stuff to me is what gave birth to what you see now. Now, of course, the true Final Fantasy heads are going to say, no, it's Final Fantasy 1 that did it. No. That was boring. That was like playing Pokemon, the first edition, where it's all aerial views and it looks crappy. This was the best graphic game that I had ever seen, because you have cutaways, and the graphics at that time were just amazing. I mean, Your heart's pumping throughout. You get this big team of guys. It's diversified. You got the dang dog who's a chief who's joining you on the fight. It was just an amazing game. Please, in the comments, tell me what game is better. RPG is better than Final Fantasy VII. There's a reason why they've remade it. I think they're redoing the graphics to the original game and bringing it up to 2023. I don't know if they've already done that yet, but I know it's coming out. Final Fantasy VII, the greatest RPG game ever made. Bison are the heaviest land mammals in North America at 2,000 pounds and 6 feet tall. They can actually run up to 40 miles an hour, which is faster than a galloping horse. They survived the Ice Age. They're the national mammal of the United States. Even their grazing is essential for the prairie ecosystem. Now, check this out about mating season with bison. So first of all, this is called the rut, which is probably the most masculine name you could ever give a mating season, the rut, which is where a male bison, what's also called a bull, right? So a bull competes with the rights to mate with females that can involve physical fights and confrontation. This is an animal for us guys. The bison should be the national masculinity animal of the world. I mean, amazing. So check this out. The high-ranking bulls, which are usually the older ones, will mate with more females, even though bison reach maturity around 3 years of age. So they're 3 years old. They actually may not mate until they've achieved high enough rank in the herd's hierarchy. So I know there's a lot of ladies that are like, oh my God, this is a euphemism for what I want in a man. You need to achieve some high rank before you go out there and start mating and bringing these families up out of your loins. Bison are one of the most fascinating animals on the planet. Have you ever heard of Dr. John R. Brinkley? This was an early 20th century entrepreneur. He claimed to be a doctor. No one knows, in fact, if his medical license had actually been something that was factual. But the amazing thing about this guy is just before the 1930s, he was making $10,000 a procedure. And this procedure was so crazy. It was a goat gland procedure. So that's how he was known. Dr. John R. Brinkley, the goat gland doctor. So they would take slivers of goat and they would transplant that into men in there, down there. Once they did this, it was believed that it would improve their vitality and it would cure their impotence, and people that weren't able to have kids were suddenly able to have kids because in the goat glands, there's all this testosterone. And this was based on an observation of a lot of farm people. Again, Brinkley is from Kansas, Milford, Kansas. So this is his population of customers, farmers, people who understand that goat life, right? So he has one success story. A farmer, years and years of not being able to have kids, suddenly has a kid. He takes that success story and he plasters it all over America. In fact, he was one of the first people to use radio to leverage his message and services across the entire nation. He was so successful at doing this because he would also upsell and sell you additional products like ointments and oils and elixirs on top of doing these procedures for $10,000 a pop. So he was so good at this that the FTC comes along and one of their first attempts to regulate the industry tells them, hey, you can't operate in the US anymore. Your range is too far. So he takes his business down to Mexico, right? Just around the Texas border. And he installs these powerful broadcasting systems, more powerful than the other ones that he had in the US. And now his signal is actually reaching more people further than ever before. So he creates this Disneyland, Disney World experience where he's creating these pamphlets and posters of come down to Del Rio. It's beautiful out here and get your medical procedures done. This guy has been studied by the top marketing people in our country, in our world. I first learned about this guy through Dan Kennedy, through his book, Making Them Believe. So yes, they did determine that this was all a fraud, that there was no medical scientific foundation that these goat gland procedures worked. But his marketing techniques are bona fide. They're absolutely electric, and he's one of the first people to really mass market across the United States from such a, humble place, starting right in Kansas, not apologizing for anything. I mean, he used his family. He would advertise him and John Boy going on a hunt, and this is why you and your family should pack up and take the train and come to Del Rio and get your goat gland procedures, or you can order your vitamins and elixirs to keep yourself strong and healthy and full of testosterone so that you can be a good husband to your wife. This guy was an absolute genius, and he was making like $12 million a year doing this. So in today's dollars, he's making $200 to $300 million a year. This guy was killing the game. If you don't know who Dr. John R. Brinkley is, go study him. I mean, when they came after his medical license, he actually started to run for governor so that he could continue to prove his authority and his trustworthiness in his space. So you would constantly one-up his critics. He would constantly one-up the people who were detractors to his product or service in an effort to only exacerbate his presence and his marketing. This guy was an absolute genius. You have to study him. Let me tell you 5 fascinating facts about coffee. Number 1, coffee beans are not beans at all, but rather seeds from the fruit of a coffee plant. 2, Beethoven was so particular about his coffee that he would count exactly 60 beans of coffee before he made his brew. The coffee buzz, number 3. The coffee buzz is caused by caffeine blocking adenosine receptors in the brain. So the caffeine blocks your receptors, and that gives you the buzz. It's not energy flowing through your body. Number 4, dark roast actually has less caffeine than light roast because the roasting process reduces the bean's caffeine content. A lot of you folks think the darker, the more caffeine, but that is not true. And then lastly, the world's most expensive coffee, Kopi Luwak, can cost up to $600 a pound. And it's made from beans being digested and excreted by a wildcat called the Asian palm civet. So this Asian palm civet, this wildcat, poops out the coffee cherries, and that's what's taken and made into this $600 a pound coffee. Just nothing but trains today. Just every train in the world is literally coming by and just ruining all my takes. This is absolutely ridiculous. Like literally 3 freight trains have gone by in like 10 minutes. So every single take that I got had to meck, meck, meck. Come on. This is the part of Chicago history that they don't want you to know. Have you heard of the Levee? You've heard of Al Capone, but have you heard of the Levee? The Levee was basically the South Loop, and it was a part of the city where crime was legal. You could do anything here. Gambling, booze, specific kind of hotels that allowed certain kind of activities. This is part of the Chicago fame at this point. This is what's making Chicago world famous because everyone you could think of that was famous or powerful at the time was visiting the Levee. I want you to go look this up. Wikipedia, Google, the Levee, Chicago, and watch your mind be absolutely blown. Why is it so difficult to buy a house? Like, seriously, why does it feel like I have to jump through 10 rings of fire just to purchase a freaking home? Like, it's ridiculous. I gotta get the pre-approval and go through probate and blah, 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 blah. What is all this? What, you gotta have 3 years of income, 10% down. Why does it feel like I have to pass the bar exam just to get a freaking house? It's a huge flaw in the business model. Do you know what would happen to the real estate market if they actually made it easy for people to purchase homes? Where just like if I go to the Apple store, if I want to buy a computer, I put down the cash and I buy a computer. If I want to go buy a car, I go to the dealership, they run my little credit, or I come in with a pre-approval and I buy the car. It's very, very simple. But the system, whatever system or matrix, whatever you want to call it, that designed the way that people can get approved for homes is absolutely ridiculous. The banking world, the banking system is off its rocker. Because here's what happens. The people who can actually qualify for these loans to purchase homes, they are actually going to go to me and you, and they're going to ask us to afford that payment. So what sense does it make for a bank to require you to go through all these to get through all the red tape to purchase when that person is only going to come to you and me and ask us to pay their mortgage? If you go buy a duplex, you go buy a multi-unit, who's paying the rent? Is it that person who got approved for it? Or is it all the tenants who supposedly couldn't qualify? They can't afford the multi-unit, but they're being asked to pay the rent. Now, most of you are going to be like, well, that's a multi-unit. You pull your money together and you pay. A duplex. You get qualified from the bank to get the duplex and you live in it and you get one other tenant. What is going to be the cost of that tenant's rent? It's going to be enough to cover the mortgage and give you some drip. So who is paying the mortgage off? The tenant who couldn't originally qualify for the actual duplex itself. So guess who's paying you back, bank? Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo. Guess who's paying you back? It isn't the person that you just qualified for the loan. It's the other people who didn't qualify, who's paying you your money back. So why not just create a product that allows people to pay rent the first couple of years, a rent to buy product where you get an option to then buy the property after you've shown that you can successfully make payments? Why not put people in that track since you have all this supply of houses, all this endless supply, but no one can take advantage of it because they never qualify for these loans, especially in times like this where we're still in recessionary constraints. Inflation is still super high, and now it's super hard to get any kind of loan right now. Well, all your people who qualify for the loans right now are coming to me to make their payments.